Hello, hello, Heal Squad. Glad to be back with you today. We'll start with our quote of the day. It's one of my favorite quotes ever, by the way. Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. That is from Hippocrates. Friends, I don't know why we have strayed from that, but we have. Heal Squad, it is going to be a great day today. You know why? Because when you know better, you get better. And that's what we're going to do here today. We have another all-star show lined up for you today. But first, if you haven't left us a review, please do. Thank you so much to everyone who has. They light us up. They keep us going. We will put a link in the summary of this episode to make it super easy. You just click on it. Tell us how it's been going for you, anything that's changed, shifted in your life, what you've loved, a guest you've loved, any of it would be great. Don't forget, we have our merch at mariamenounos.com. You can get a t-shirt or a mug or something to keep reminding you that you are on this healing journey. Also, as you know, Macy's is a big supporter of the show, and we're so grateful to them. I do have my link, Macy's.com/Heal Squad, with all of my top picks from the site currently. And so with summer upon us, I have some new fashion that I've put up there. There's all kinds of stuff for your home and kitchen and gift ideas. So head on over there for anything that's coming up. We get credit for anything that you buy through that link. So even if you say, Maria, I didn't have what I wanted there, I'm sorry that I didn't read your mind at the moment, but I will get there, I'm sure. Just purchase through that link and it gives us a credit and it helps us keep the lights on here. So thank you for that.
As we talk about brain fog that a lot of us have now, we think it's because I'm always on the computer screen or I'm always on the phone or my mind's in 20 places. And I'm sure some of that's true, but you talk about how the brain can also suffer from inflammation.
Right. One of the things that surprises most people, we now have very good blood tests to look for leaky gut. And if you have leaky gut, the odds are you have leaky brain. And information is actually sent up to the brain, and your brain is activated to be ready for what's coming from the gut. And the cells in our brain that protect our neurons, which are called glial cells or microglial cells, they're basically the bodyguards, secret service of the brain. And they actually get signals that come from the gut that there's trouble down below and to protect the brain cells at all costs. And these guys, fascinating videos, you can even see them online, of these glial cells actually eating the neuron dendrites, where one neuron talks to another neuron cell, to try and protect the neuron from this invasion that's coming up. And it's no wonder that, we're foggy brain, we don't think right, our memory is kind of screwed up, because this is now called neuroinflammation. So if you got leaky gut, you got leaky brain. And what this is a warning sign, because neuroinflammation is actually what's driving the epidemic of dementia, the epidemic of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. They're all tied in to leaky gut.
And I always say, like, my heart goes out to anyone who has Alzheimer's or family members who do, because those are the diseases that don't just put you in peril, but everyone around you.
Because quite frankly, the people who are the caregivers for the dementia patients, they suffer in a way even more than the person with that disease.
Yeah.
You're right. And again, 2 generations ago, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's were oddities. They were not the rule, and they're very rare to see these sorts of things in people who don't eat our diet, people who are not, quote, westernized. But now we're seeing this epidemic.
It's an epidemic.
It's literally an epidemic. And the important information about that is, regardless of what you see on TV, there is absolutely no treatment or cure for Parkinson's or for Alzheimer's, but it is totally and completely preventable and often salvageable by The minute you see this sort of thing, it can be stopped in its tracks. And that's what we do in our clinic as well.
With, let's see, I have so many questions now. With regard to leaky gut, what are I guess the bloating and the lack of energy and the constipation of diarrhea seems to be an indication, but what is the actual test? I didn't know there was an actual leaky gut test. Can you tell us what the specific test is so we can ask our physicians about?
Well, so Medicare insurance doesn't pay for it, number one.
All right.
Number two, if I was going to have one test that I would ask my physician to tell me my fate, it would be a fasting insulin level, not a hemoglobin A1C, not a fasting blood sugar, not a glucose. It would be a fasting insulin level. And the reason for that is about 80% of Americans have pre-diabetes or insulin resistance. And as I tell my women patients, telling you have pre-diabetes is like telling you're a little bit pregnant. There's pre-diabetes is insulin resistance, and insulin resistance, the overwhelming cause of it is leaky gut. And the more we can, for instance, a fasting insulin level should be absolutely less than 10. And most of us think it should be less than 6. Give you a personal example. When I started on myself 23 years ago, my fasting insulin level was 16. My fasting insulin level, and that's very high. That's pre-diabetic. My fasting insulin level now is 2. And my wife has a fasting insulin level of less than 1. I hate her. I can't.
So at 16, would you say you had leaky gut?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And you can do this just with normal blood work, right? You just have to.
Yeah. A fasting insulin level will cost you $8.
Wow.
The other thing I would recommend everyone get is a highly sensitive HS-CRP. And just kind of remember the word crap. It's a marker of inflammation, and it makes you feel like crap. And so those are 2 really easily obtained tests, cheap tests. That's a really good starting point. And this is all in the book. And I go through other tests that people can get.
And by the way, and there's so much in the book, you guys. There's recipes. There's more specifics. We're just touching the broader strokes. It's called The Energy Paradox by Dr. Stephen Gundry. It is out, and this is something that you will continually be able to refer to literally for the rest of your life. I think this is just so important. But doctor, please continue.
Yeah, so that's a really good starting point. Again, there's more sophisticated tests we can do. But this is a really good starting point.
And with the highly sensitive HS-CRP, what levels are we looking for? Is it a yes and no, positive, negative?
Less than 1. Less than 1.
And anything above that?
You better go looking for why that is.
And very well could be leaky gut.
Correct.
And is there a more, so if someone is a little bit
Let me give you another example. Okay. If you've been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease like Hashimoto's thyroid,
which is what I have that.
Perfect. So you have, by definition, leaky gut. And if we get rid of your leaky gut, 90% chance in my clinic that your Hashimoto's will go away. In fact, 80% of my practice is now autoimmune diseases that nobody can figure out. And we have a 90% success rate with ridding someone of an autoimmune disease by following our program. That's all in the energy paradox.
Wow. Dr. Gundry, where is your practice?
LA.
So I have offices in Palm Springs and in Santa Barbara. Great. And we see people from all over the world.
Yeah, I believe
we actually take insurance. We take Medicare.
I believe it. It's such an investment in yourself. And then if you did want to invest in a more sophisticated test, you'd said some of the testing is expensive. Is it for the leaky gut? Is there, what would be an example?
Yeah, so one of the best, the one I use is a company called Vibrant America. And their test for leaky gut is stupidly named the Wheat Zoomer, and the name was made up long before Zoom calls, I assure you. But it is a wonderfully accurate test for leaky gut, and it'll cost you $199.
I mean, short money, in my opinion, for the ramifications that are going on, and I think certainly so much with our food. Because I know we don't have you too long. Can we talk about timing and chrono consumption? You know, for maybe our eating habits and how those are feeding into this.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. One of the things that probably most of us are aware of but don't think about is we now eat. The average American is eating something for up to 16 hours every day, from literally the second we wake up until right before we go to bed. And that gives us about 8 hours of downtime. Before, we didn't do that. In fact, if you look at hunter-gatherers like the Hadzas, they don't get up and say, what's for breakfast? There is no breakfast. They have to find breakfast. And so they actually don't eat until about 11 o'clock in the morning when they've found something to eat. And studies have looked at the impact of compressing our eating window and what I call chrono consumption, timed consumption. We could call it intermittent fasting. We can call it time-restricted feeding, however we want to call it. But the evidence in humans as well as in animal studies show that the more we can compact our eating window, the time we start eating to the time we finish eating during the day, to about 6 to 8 hours, is going to have incredible ramifications on our health span, our longevity, and paradoxically, our energy production. We've been told, oh my gosh, I got to eat lots of meals all throughout the day to keep my energy levels up.
Yeah.
And in fact, this is actually the way to stop your energy production that I go into in the book. The other thing that's really important that the book really stresses is it's almost impossible for most people who have insulin resistance to go, let's suppose tomorrow I say, okay, tomorrow we're all going to have breakfast, breakfast at noon. Okay, let's go. Well, most of us would fall flat on our faces trying to get to noon because we actually can't make a shift in energy production. But at the same time, tomorrow, let's suppose you normally eat breakfast at 7. I'll say, let's make it to 8 before you eat breakfast. Can you do that? And you go, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that. Then I'll say, how about Friday, we make it till 9 o'clock. Can you do that? Okay. And I'll let you have the weekend off. And then next week, we'll start again 1 hour at a time, delaying our breakfast. And we have a 6-week program where slowly but surely we retrain our eating habits so that by the end of 6 weeks, you're eating break fast at noon and you're finishing up about 7 o'clock at night, and the energy levels soar. And the good news is you actually get time off on the weekends. And we've shown in human studies that if we give you a break over the weekends, you're liable to stick with this program for life. And it literally is a life-changing and energy-changing program.
I believe it. And how does we've had some sleep specialists on the show. How does sleep affect this, or does it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It turns out, and I've been writing about this for years, one of the things that people need to realize that the brain actually undergoes a wash cycle where it cleans itself. It's called the lymphatic circulation, and there won't be a test. But
oh no, it seems like we have frozen. He was talking. Dr. Gundry was talking about the brain. I think recycling. When you sleep, because we've heard that from other people as well.
Okay.
So we're just gonna. We are pausing for technical difficulties. Please stand by.
I'm gonna leave.
They're frozen. So let's hold that
We're back.
thought.
We're
Oh, you
back.
guys back?
Yeah, we've. Oh my lord.
The dog did it.
Yes, we'll blame
Yeah,
the
we
dog.
blame Winnie.
So let's take it from how the brain recycles with sleep, if that's possible, doctor.
Yeah, so the brain goes through literally a wash cycle, and it happens early in sleep, and it's called deep sleep. And you need a tremendous amount of blood flow to your brain to accomplish this. So literally a wash cycle. If you eat near the time you go to bed, our digestion takes huge amounts of blood flow. And all that blood is down in your intestines doing the work, and it's not available to actually wash your brain. And that's why study after study shows that it's really important to have at least 3 hours between your last meal of the day and the time you go to sleep, so your brain is able to undergo this wash cycle. And what's so exciting about that is during this wash cycle, you wash out all of this debris that accumulates in your brain, things like tau proteins, things like amyloid plaques that are very highly associated with developing Alzheimer's. And without that wash cycle, these things don't get washed out. So it's another reason why not eating near the time you go to bed is so important to protect your brain, if nothing else.
Obeying the Chrono Consumption plan, as you said. Can we? So you mentioned the 7 deadly disruptors. Can you speak to some of the deadly disruptors in terms of brain health?
Sure. Yeah. Real briefly, one of the things, the number one energy disruptor is antibiotics. Broad spectrum antibiotics that we take that are fed to our animals. People don't realize that it's still very legal to feed cows, pigs, antibiotics that make them grow fatter and faster. It's illegal now to feed them to chickens. However, there's a loophole in the law that if a veterinarian taking care of 100,000 chickens thinks that one chicken might be sick, that he can give antibiotics to the entire flock to save that one chicken. And the vet is hired by the big food corporation, and of course, he might have an interest in keeping his job. So 60%, some studies show, of natural non-antibiotic chickens still have antibiotic residue.
So doc, for the average person out there, where can we buy meats that are going to be free of that?
Yeah.
Or are there ones?
So look for grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and it's really important to look for the second part. Here's the problem. There is no legal definition of grass-fed. So if a cow eats grass for 1 day of its life and then is taken to the feedlot and fed grains and soybeans the rest of its life, you can legally call it grass-fed because it ate grass for 1 day. On the other hand, if it eats grass its entire life, then that means it's grass-fed and grass-finished. And you will find this labeling, for instance, Whole Foods is just an example. Know your farmer. The same way with chickens. The federal law, get this, says that you can label a chicken free-range organic if you keep it in a warehouse with 100,000 other chickens, feed it organic corn and organic soybeans, and open a door to the outside for 5 minutes every 24 hours, and the chicken has the opportunity to go outside. Oh, and there's a catch. If the price of organic grains and soybeans go double the normal price, you can switch over to conventional grains and soybeans and still label it organic because you meant well.
Oh my gosh.
Federal law passed in 2007.
So what is the workaround? Like, I know with the other ones we have grass-fed, grass-finished.
So try to find pasture-raised chicken and know your farmer and find out what additional foods that they're feeding them.
And go ahead, doctor, sorry.
Yeah. There's even come to my podcast, the Dr. Gundry podcast, and look for Farmer Dan's interview, lectin-free chicken. Farmer Dan is in Texas, and he's now raising lectin-free pastured chickens.
That's awesome.
And
It's really cool.
Is it true that that lamb is one of the meats that's not shot with steroids? I had heard that.
Yeah, so lamb from New Zealand is grass-fed and grass-finished. About 80% of lamb from Australia is grass-fed and grass-finished. Unfortunately, a great deal of the lamb in the United States is fed grains. I actually have several sheep farmers that have had to switch over to feeding their lambs grain to get them to market economically. So, but New Zealand has a law that you can only have grass-fed, grass-finished lamb.
Wow. And so what are some of the other disruptors, doctor, while I still have you?
So a ton of our pharmaceuticals, even over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, are a great way to make leaky gut. For instance, ibuprofen and naproxen, Advil and Aleve are actually like swallowing hand grenades. They make holes in the wall of our gut. The antacids like Nexium and Prilosec actually change your gut microbiome, and wildly enough, they actually stop the production of energy in our mitochondria. And that's why there used to be a law that you could only take these for only 2 weeks because they were so dangerous in producing dementia and congestive heart failure. And now we have people on these for years and years and years for heartburn.
And what do you say to like Tums and those kind of antacids?
Tums are perfectly safe, although Rolaids actually have less sugar than Tums.
Okay. All right. That's kind of good.
So that's an option.
When we need that. Any other disruptors?
Heartburn, believe it or not, is a sign of lectins, and lectins are the cause of heartburn. I used to have horrible heartburn, and once I got lectins out of my life, it all went away, like all my patients. More disruptors. Blue light. We were talking about sleep. Blue light is everywhere. It's in our computer screens. It's in our cell phones. It's in our lighting. And blue light actually makes you stay awake. It's one of the best sleep disruptors ever devised. And it makes you hungry. Blue light was designed to stimulate hunger hormone production. And so when you go home, get yourself a pair of blue blocking glasses. They're becoming extremely cheap. They don't necessarily look like sunglasses anymore. Wear them once the sun goes down. Make sure on your devices that you put the nighttime mode automatically change over to less blue light after the sun goes down. If you're going to watch a TV before you go to bed, please, please, please get a pair of blue blocking glasses to watch it. It'd make a big difference.
Wow. And I guess lastly, like just I know you have in the book some do's and don'ts. You know, I know we heard a lot already,
Yeah.
but in summary, you know, I guess the do's are eating. You know, it seems
So,
like
it's interesting. And I've said this in every book. I learned this from a gastroenterologist at Great Ormond Street in London when I was training there. It's not what I tell you to eat that's so important. It's what I tell you not to eat that's so important. And rule number one, we've got a yes list and a no list, but it's far more important to stay away from the things that are going to cause leaky gut. And those in general are the grains except sorghum and millet. If you're going to eat like rice, believe it or not, eat white rice instead of brown rice.
really.
4 billion people use rice as their staple, and 4 billion people use white rice rather than brown rice. 4 billion people cannot be that stupid. They've been taking the hull off of rice for 8,000 years because the hull contains the lectins.
Wow.
Yeah. I think, that's when I started realizing too that there was maybe some things going wrong. I was like, oh God, I'm bloated a lot. There is some loose stool situation going on. There's like all this stuff. And, it's hard to catch up with what's happening sometimes. And I think that even just mentioning those symptoms, someone's going to kind of like look down and be like, yeah, that's kind of happening to me too. And those are the red flags to start
Exactly.
addressing your gut issues before they become bigger issues.
Exactly. The earlier you can catch any issue, the better. So yes, most people, I mean, I see this all the time in my practice. Most people come in, they're not even complaining of gut issues, but when you ask them, they say, oh yeah, actually I do get bloated. Actually, yeah, my stools are looser than they should be. So yes, most people just accept these symptoms as normal, but the earlier you catch anything, the easier it is to reverse. And it doesn't mean if you've had it for years, you can't reverse it either. That's the beauty of the body. The body is an incredible organism that actually wants to heal and wants to, create balance and get back to normal. If we give it what it wants and what it needs. Unfortunately, we don't a lot of the time.
Yeah, if you had a gut issue, like if I was like, okay, yes, I'm bloated. Yes, I have loose stool most of the time. I would go to a gastroenterologist. And what would they do for me, Dr. Lipman? Because I've never really gone to one that I can remember in recent times.
Well, that's another great question, because unfortunately, the gastroenterologist will do an endoscopy maybe or colonoscopy, and they won't find anything because, those tests are normal. It's this metaphor I give you, in Western medicine, there's disease and there's health. There's black and there's white, and there's nothing in between. But there's this huge gray spectrum between health and disease. And what I do and what functional medicine doctors in general do is try to take you from that, the dark area of the disease towards health. So until there's a major problem, a gastroenterologist is probably not going to pick it up and just going to give you some drug to suppress a symptom. So yes, unfortunately, this key organ system of the body is not dealt particularly well with in Western medicine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, it's funny. Even my doctor was saying I should see somebody in gastroenterology because I have what was it? Hold on. I have it written down here. It was intrinsic factor antibodies because I'm anemic and I'm B12 deficient.
Right.
And my A1C levels are a little higher than normal. So it was one of those things where he's like, you should probably, I think he suggested an endoscopy.
Yeah, you can have an endoscopy. There may be something wrong with your gut. I don't know if you've been checked for SIBO. That's one of the tests that they can do. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That's a breath test. There's some tests that, even traditional doctors can do. Unfortunately, they don't do. There are some more and more interesting tests that we now have available that can actually help us determine what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I agree. If you have intrinsic factor antibodies, it's usually it'll cause a low B12. It's usually often a gut problem, and you need to have your gut checked out. So to be continued, Maria, let's get this sorted out.
Yeah, isn't that funny? I was like, Kelsey, am I catching your gut stuff, sympathy pains here? Like, what's happening? I never had that before.
I said yes.
But I always have had anemic tendencies. I'm always anemic. My family's all anemic. And I think B12 has always been a little thing that I've needed.
You may not be absorbing B12, exactly.
Yeah, my dad isn't either. My dad, it's funny. So we're all kind of in the zone. But I know because of my physical and my A1C levels being higher, I'm really having to focus on, okay, this is something I don't want to get out of control. I've got to cut the sugar, which you talk about.
Okay. Yep.
And what's funny is when you give yourself the space to be a little bit more still, you start to see what these things do to you. So the second I had even a smidge of sugar, the inflammation and the phlegm that pops up, you're just, a one little half a piece of something.
Exactly. And this is what happens. We are so tuned into the outside world, especially in the last, couple of years, never mind weeks. There's been so much info, everyone's so caught up in the external world. We don't tune in. And I think as you get older, it also becomes more and more important to, whether it's meditation or yoga, do some internal work where you actually tune in and listen to what's going on and not get so caught up with all this external chatter, which is very easy. So a lot of, what I'm recommending is this ancient wisdom, which is now we have this modern research, which validates a lot of the ancient wisdom about, moving your body, about meditation, which is about sleep. A lot of this wisdom, which I which is ancient, and most cultures have talked about it. But now we actually have the research to validate, what they've been saying for centuries.
Yeah. But sugar is a huge
The
issue for
devil.
people. And I've had some challenges where there's so many things that have popped up in the market now, so many alternatives for sugar, so many
Exactly.
alternatives to meat. And that's another thing I want to talk about that you mentioned in the book that I really loved, was breaking down those kind of impossible burgers and all of that. But uh, I have always been of the belief that if you're going to do it, do the real thing, because the
Exactly.
fake thing is
Yes.
going to be worse. And I feel like you're kind of on that
Yes.
page too.
Exactly the same page. So those fake meats, for instance, we have, unfortunately, the food industry caters to, what the culture wants. So the fake meats. Now, I'm not saying the from what's the word, from a climate perspective or whatever, from a
Environmental.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Environmental perspective, having a meat alternative is not a bad idea. But from a health perspective, it's full of junk. It's fake food. Why would you want to eat that? Now, occasionally, if you want that feel of a burger and you don't eat meat for philosophical reasons, I understand. But to think that it's healthy, it's nonsense. Rather have a grass-fed burger without the bun than the fake meat. I'm against all that fake food, whether it's, gluten alternatives or these meat alternatives, or, just eat real food, eat food as close to nature. I think that it's what we're doing to the food that's more of a problem. I always say if it's made in a factory, it's probably not good for you. If it's made by nature, it's probably good.
Yeah, I agree. Although I have cut the 1 teaspoon of sugar I put in my coffee every morning. That was getting a little
That's
gluttonous.
unnecessary. You can just cut that. Yeah, you
Yeah.
don't need that.
Yeah, I said goodbye to it.
Bye.
Good.
I was like, goodbye, we don't need you.
And
Because
then your taste buds adjust. You don't need it.
Yeah.
You realize,
well, we have the soy milk. The soy milk is creamy enough in there. It's organic, non-GMO, and I love it.
Good.
But you also talked about, I mean, there's so many tips in here that I've already started applying, like I said, but good
Right.
salt versus bad salt. I thought that was a fascinating discussion I've never heard anybody else talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think salt, I don't make a big issue of salt, to be quite honest. I know it's become a lot of, in Western medicine, especially in cardiology, they make a big issue of salt. The problem is I think we get so much salt from, processed foods. That's the problem. And, regular salt now has had the iodine, it's had all the minerals taken out of it, regular table salt. So I'm a big fan of like Himalayan salt or even sea salt, proper salts that haven't had these, I think there's 17 or 20 minerals that get extracted from it. So I'm not against salt. Just use real salt, not the fakes, not salt that has had all these minerals taken out.
The table salt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then in terms of the meat, let's go back to that for a second, because we have partnered with Thrive Market on this show for a
Yeah.
while. And I know that you're actually a fan of it as well. And what
Yeah.
you brought to my attention that I hadn't realized and had skimmed over because it wasn't a priority for me was the fact that they have organic meat, but they have the proper meat that you say. So one of the things that I want to kind of clarify for people is when you're at the supermarket and you're looking at the meats, what you're looking for is grass-fed, grass-finished
Exactly.
in meat. But what is it in poultry and all of that?
Okay, so that's a great point. So organic red beef doesn't mean anything except that the corn that the cows were fed is organic. Now, when you feed cows corn, they become acidotic and they have to be given antibiotics and all sorts of things. So feeding, cows are ruminants that have two stomachs. They need to eat grass. Grass is what they need to be fed. If you want to eat meat, you should be eating grass-fed and grass-finished meat. When it comes to poultry and eggs, organic and pasture-raised is what you're looking for. But labeling has become tricky as well. I mean, labeling has become a problem, but in general, I trust Thrive. I think Thrive is a wonderful market. I think they're doing the right thing. I think I wish there were more Thrives, but I'm a big supporter of Thrive. But meat should be grass-fed and grass-finished, poultry, organic, eggs, pasture-raised.
I mean, there's a lot of bioindividuality with this, right? And every food we eat either feeds inflammation or fights it. There's people need to realize that there's no, like, I'm doing nothing for your biochemistry food. There's no Switzerland meal. There's no neutral food when it comes to every food we eat either feeds inflammation or fights it, and really realizing that. But, there should be a grace and lightness to this. And there's a lot of nuance and context to these conversations. And it's not about restriction. It's really about focusing on foods that love you back. So, I mean, one of the staples that I talk about in Gut Feelings are these soups and stews, which people would have done for a long time. I mean, when you hear the cliche of, well, when someone's sick, there's chicken noodle soup. It's not the noodles that people are getting some supportive benefits from. It's the soups, it's the broths, it's the vegetables, it's the soft cooked vegetables, it's the soft cooked protein that are there. So if you're talking about nourishing your gut-brain axis, soups and stews and broths are one of the best group of things to integrate into your life. And it's not about what you can't have. As I say in the book, eat whatever you want, but I want you to start shifting your perspective to using meals as a medicine and a meditation, and say, okay, how did this meal make me feel? Did it make me feel great? Did it love me back, or didn't it love me back? And if you may be out with your friends and family, and maybe it was that food that maybe didn't love you back as much, but you were socializing and hanging out with your friends. The community and the time spent was medicinal with your friends and family, and it was worth it. Then eat it and move on. Like, shame is worse than any food that didn't love you back, any junk food. But you may use your meal as a meditation and realize, you know what, that really wasn't worth it for me. I felt bloated. I felt kind of fatigued. I felt hungover the next day from something. And you like feeling great more than you thought you wanted something that didn't love you back. And I think that's that mindfulness practice that I feel is really the paradigm shift for people, because it's not about this list of do's or don'ts. It's that you're growing in awareness, and really it's a meditation practice to be your own N of one experiment, to learn and get feedback from your body talk. What does your body love and what does your body hate? So that's what I mean by foods that love you back. There's obviously some commonalities between most people, that foods that just tend to not love anybody back, but there's a lot of nuance and gradient of exceptions too. Because I mean, talking to people for a living, looking at labs, if I hung my hat on one specific way of eating that applies to everybody, I'd be proven wrong all day long. So there's a lot of bioindividuality when it comes to food, just like so much else in wellness.
So I remember reading in the book something about even healthy foods you have to be aware of, that they might be causing you to bloat, right? What are some of those foods that you've seen that are common, that are healthy, that still are bloating some of your patients?
Yeah. So I think the most common ones would be whole grains and legumes. They can work great for some people. There's nothing
Whole
inherently
grains,
wrong.
like the quinoas and
Quinoa, rice, corn, ancient grains that are out there like the amaranth, buckwheat, and even like whole wheat. Like, many people will get the sprouted whole wheat bread that, it looks so healthy, right? But it can definitely cause digestive issues in some people. Some people it works great. And that's that bioindividuality that I was talking about. Same with legumes, beans, lentils, nuts and seeds are another example. Work great for some people, cause digestive problems in other people. So it's not about making an indictment on a specific food and saying, well, that's always bad, because, other than processed junk, like foods that have no nutritional value, and even that, people can have those and feel fine. It's not that it's going to be healthy for you. And we could look at their inflammation levels or their blood sugar, and it's probably impacting that. But I feel a certain way, if we're talking about digestive health specifically, and musculoskeletal inflammation, and let's say brain fog, fatigue, and things like that. These whole foods can be problematic for some people. But the foods that are probably the less known that can be problematic for some people from a digestive gut-brain axis standpoint, if someone has a lot of digestive issues, a lot of raw vegetables can cause some bloating and digestive issues. It doesn't mean the vegetables are bad, but it just means your gut needs some TLC, some repairing time, a proverbial siesta in a way to allow to digest it. So that's why soups and stews are so therapeutic, because it kind of takes and it pre-digests the vegetables in some ways, where your gut can focus on healing and gaining resilience and not digesting all the plant fibers. And we even, like with fruits, we have some patients have more delicate, sensitive digestive systems. They'll have like cooked fruits, like a compote, like an inside of a pie without the pie part, that can make it more digestible. Higher FODMAP vegetables specifically can be for people that have SIBO. We see a lot of digestive issues clinically. So people that have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So things like onions and garlic and cruciferous vegetables, those are higher FODMAP. And then I would say lots of raw greens can be hard on the digestion issue as well. This is not news. I mean, this is not news to traditional, like ancient medicine. If you look at traditional Chinese medicine, if you look at Ayurvedic medicine, they knew this thousands of years ago. If you have digestive problems, focusing on soups and stews, cooked foods, warm foods, it's easier on your gut. So functional medicine is just reminding people what the ancients already knew.
Yeah. What do you start with? Do you start with the gut when you have a patient, labs and gut?
Yeah, health history. Health history is the unsexy part, but it's really looking at what labs are the most relevant, right? So you don't want to run labs if you don't need to. Like, what is the most condition-specific, relevant labs? And what are the stones that are most likely to have something underneath it, so to speak, from a differential diagnosis standpoint? But if you're looking at the most common upstream root issue, the gut's a good place to start for most people. You're going to get more, it's a bigger needle mover for most people because of the influence that it wields on our mood, the influence that it wields on inflammation levels, the influence that wields on our hormones, and of course, our digestion. There's a whole slew of people that have digestive problems. But even these downstream issues like brain issues, like hormonal problems and metabolic issues and inflammation issues, the gut actually is implicated in all of those issues in many cases. So yeah, it is a good place to start. And then from there, you can get granular and more specific based off of labs.
So how does one know physically that they have inflammation issues?
So you could go off of symptoms first. If you look at the fact that inflammation is the commonality between just about every health problem, I would think taking an assessment and checking in with your body. What's your body telling you? We see these symptoms in functional medicine oftentimes as like a check engine light. Okay, the check engine light's on. What's my body telling me? So starting from your head down, I mean, brain fog, anxiety, depression, there's a whole field of research called the cytokine model of cognitive function. Cytokines are pro-inflammatory cells. So it's researchers looking at how does inflammation impact how my brain works. So those are inflammatory in nature. And moving down, I mean, if you look at the skin, a skin is oftentimes an outer window as to what's going on inside the body, specifically the gut. We have what's called the gut-skin axis. So oftentimes, breakouts or redness or eczema, psoriasis, dermatitis, they are oftentimes they're inflammatory problems, but a lot of them have autoimmune components or overtly autoimmune in nature. So understanding the gut's hugely beneficial with skin issues. Looking at your hair as well, you could look at your thyroid hormonal problems, estrogen, progesterone issues. All of these are inflammatory because many hormonal problems are signaling issues. The receptor sites are not picking up the hormone the way that we want it to be. So there can be insulin resistance, and leptin resistance, which can drive weight loss resistance or trouble losing weight, has inflammatory components. Two, of course, the bigger things that we're talking about, like digestive problems, musculoskeletal arthritis issues. So it's implicated in so many different things.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or mariamenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.